Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
Do you ever feel like you're doing the journey alone? Have you ever felt like that you just need someone to talk to, someone who could bring some perspective into your world? Or maybe you're not the type of person who learns from watching video courses or reading books, and you just want to talk with someone specifically about your challenges and how to break through them. I want to introduce you to the High Performance Men's Coaching Program. It's an intensive coaching experience designed to unlock a man's full potential in his life, business, and relationships. Over this past year, I've brought together and trained some of the best coaches in the world to help men step up, stop playing small, and become the strongest versions of themselves. Learn more about High Performance Men's Coaching at kfmcoach.com. Again, that's kfmcoach.com. You are not alone, and we are here to cut through the crap, hold you accountable, and challenge you so that you can make your dreams become a reality. Go to kfmcoach.com to learn more and apply. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Dan Nitro Clark, former NFL football player for the Rams and star of the original American Gladiator. He's also acted in many popular movies alongside actors like Bruce Willis and Christian Bale. His latest book, which is going to be the main focus of this interview, is titled Fuck Dying: How Cheating Death Kicked My Ass into Loving, Learning, and Living My Best Life. Dan, welcome to the show.
Hey, excited to hear, man. I love the work that you're doing and glad I can be of service and help.
I'm glad to have the Gladiator here on the show. And
just know I wear my spandex, okay?
Yeah, for the audience listening, you can't see him, but he's in full costume still to this day. Well, it's a pleasure having you here. And so let's dive in right away with maybe like a favorite success quote or some sort of saying that you've lived by that's helped you on your journey.
Yeah, it's a newer one for me. You know, back in December of 2013, I had a heart attack. It was totally unexpected. I almost died. And the motto of that, the quote is, sports taught me about life. Almost dying taught me how to live.
Sports taught me about life. Almost dying taught me about how to live. Yeah, can you
taught me how to live, yeah.
Yeah, can you share, more about that?
Yeah, so, sports was pretty much my identity growing up. So what sports, I kind of rose up from the primordial soup of personhood into a man through sports. I learned a work ethic. I learned how to win. I learned how to lose with grace. I learned about teamwork. It also had fulfilled this external need I had for, adoration and to be seen. And it created significance for me. Almost dying was a completely different experience. What that taught me about was gratitude and appreciation. It also taught me about being in service. It taught me a little more about humility, and it taught me about lifting people up. So in sports, I think a lot of the focus, especially if you're pretty good, it's even though there's a team concept to it, but there's so much about me. But I think what changed from facing my mortality is I'm much more inclusive, and it's about, instead about what can I be, it's what can I give and do, and how can I help?
So what were some of the things that you were valuing, spending more time focusing on before the heart attack? And what were the things that you then started to value more after the heart attack?
Well, there's the one interesting thing that I've uncovered, because, like I said, when you face your mortality, you do, there's a deep introspection that goes on. And so much of my life was about chasing gratification. I didn't really understand what gratitude was. So it was, I was on this pursuit for greatness, which I still believe in. I was on pursuit of always chasing the next thing. And I think a lot of people do that. I think what a lot of people do is they fall into the I'll be happy when syndrome.
Right.
I'll be happy when I get that great job, right? I'll be happy when I score the hot chick. I'll be happy when I get a promotion. I'll be happy. And I was doing that. Yeah, I was doing that, man. I said I'll be happy if I get a football scholarship, and I got a football scholarship to, at the time, San Jose State was the top 20 football team in the nation, and I was happy. But then, oh God, I'm only going to be happy if I get in the NFL.
Yeah.
Then I got to the NFL. My career was short, and I said, okay, I'll be happy if I get on TV.
Yeah.
On TV for 8 years, and I'd be like, well, I'll be happy, if I'm the next big action star. Only then, then I'll be happy when I sell a book. I'll be happy when I sell my first script, and every time I reached that goal, well, first of all, I thought that when I reached most of my goals, that it would create sustainable happiness. Hey, I've done this. My happiness is bulletproof. But I found usually that the happiness was short-lived, that I really couldn't enjoy it. And I always felt like I had to work so hard. And if I enjoyed it too much, I would lose my edge. Does that make sense?
What's the edge you're talking about? Like you would start resting on your laurels?
The drive, the motivation, that hunger we all feel that gets us out of bed. And I think for a lot of people, it's out of fear. And if you ever take that moment and say, man, life is really good, there's that fear that you won't have that drive and motivation to get you out of bed.
Yeah.
But there's this interesting story about two writers, and they were famous writers back in the 40s, and they were sitting at a guy's house, and the guy was a billionaire. And the one guy said, hey, just think of this, all the books that you've sold, all the money that you created, and all this guy makes in a single day.
Yeah.
And the other writer says, well, you know what? I have something that he can't buy. And the writer says, what? And he says, I've got enough. So I think there's that fear in so many of us because life has taught us to achieve and to be successful, and they're usually external manifestations. I think there's that feeling in life for so many of us, if we ever say, I've got enough, and we let ourselves feel that, we're afraid that we won't want to do more. But, Andrew, here's the truth. If you can feel that in your life just for a moment, your fucking life changes, bro. It changes. And there's a delicate balance between having the ability to say, I've got enough, and resting in that while still trusting that you'll have the drive to do more. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you have examples of maybe people you look up to, maybe, famous celebrities or entrepreneurs or other athletes who have reached that level of enough, but still have the drive every day to continue to do great work?
Well, I think you look at Tom Brady. The guy who just won the Super Bowl, he's that quarterback.
Probably the best game ever. One of the best games in NFL, I think.
Yeah, see, but I don't know. I'm not inside of his head. From the outside appearance, you would think Tom Brady has everything. He's got the beautiful model wife. He's got the beautiful home. He's got the contract. He's got record books. I don't know what goes on in Tom Brady's head.
Right.
Here's what and you've seen so many people, like the guy that just a month ago, Chris Cornell, the guy from the band who committed suicide.
Yeah.
Like, this guy's got everything. He's got music. He's got family. He's got a kid. We don't know what's going inside people's heads.
Yeah.
So what to do is I've learned this very simple thing is that comparison is the thief of joy. So I no longer compare myself to others. I compare myself to who I want to be and how I want to be in the world more than to what I've got. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. What came into my mind too was Robin Williams would be a guy who, or even like Heath Ledger, these guys who, just amazing, icons in their space and took their own life.
Yeah. It's sad. I mean, I've had, since I've been here in Hollywood, I've had friends die of overdose and 3 people commit suicide.
Uh-huh.
So I've seen it firsthand, and I understand it. It's a sad, sad thing. Depression. That's what I could talk for another whole hour just on depression alone, but I don't. Let's keep this focused here. Again, I think the biggest challenge is that people don't know how to be happy now. And if you can learn how to be happy now while still keeping your drive, you've solved the riddle of life. I have a way that I do it.
Okay. I'm excited. Are you going to do we have to pay for it, or do we get it now? Do we have to go somewhere online?
No.
So how do you, that is, I feel, because you're going to wake up feeling great, and you're going to have, whether good or bad things happen to you, you're still happy is what I'm getting from this.
I've found a way, and a lot of it has to do with facing my mortality, where I have a lot more happiness in my life. And one of my, I know that you do from following your past, one of them, and this is how I start almost every day with, that's meditation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it creates a base for me. It allows, I still feel all this. People think, oh my God, you meditate, you're so mellow and you're always in a good mood. You must feel nothing. I say, I feel everything,
Yeah.
but and I feel more, because when I was a young guy, you know, for me, when I say younger, when I was a teacher, and even, you know, through college football, pro football, American Gladiators, being a man was how tough you were.
Yeah. Physically,
you know what I mean?
Physically, you're saying.
Physically, how tough you were. And, you know, I had another book I wrote. It was called Gladiator, a true story of rage, and redemption. And the through line of that book was a spiritual journey about a little kid who was taken from his mother at 5. This is me. I was taken from my mom like at 4 or 5 years old, and my dad had custody of us. And I remember he had custody of us, but for some reason he wanted us to go live with my aunt and my uncle, not him, for 4 or 5 years. So we were getting on the plane, and I was just crying and crying and crying because I was being taken from my mother, at 5 years old. And I remember I got on the plane, Andrew, and there was this guy there. And he looked at me and he said, hey, let me see your muscle. And I was like, cry, what? And I flexed and I, showed him my little muscle. And he's like, oh, you got a big muscle there. And he said, you're a big boy. And he says, big boys don't cry.
Wow.
And right then, I stopped crying and I did not weep. And to me, what a man was someone who had no feelings, someone who drove through everything, someone who was, invincible.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got to probably the height of success in my life, least expectations of success. I was on the cover of TV Guide. I was, everything you want. I was on the Tonight Show. I was, on TV for 7 or 8 years. I had a little action figure. I was plasticized,
Oh,
and I had all the things. We talked about success, what external manifestations of them were, but I wasn't happy. I felt empty inside, and I was doing a lot of drugs. I was partying. It was a really, really weird time. And, meditation, there were a couple books that helped me along the way that made a huge, huge difference. So I'm sorry, I've been delaying.
No, that's good. I mean, that helps us get clarity into how you came to where you are. So I think the story is absolutely necessary, and having to numb yourself, even though you're on the cover of these magazines that you were probably dreaming of being on years prior, but little do we know you're numbing yourself with substance and drugs.
Yeah, it didn't feel like it at the time. It just, everything felt like a good time.
Yeah,
I was partying. I was on TV. I was out in Hollywood. I'd go to clubs, and I'd see Eddie Murphy and Stallone. What your generation knows as a movie, Night at the Roxbury.
Yeah.
That was a place I went.
Oh.
that really existed. And I immersed over. I went there, and I was with a guy who played pro basketball, Olden Polonies. And there was this huge dude, and Olden's 6'11", and I was this huge dude at the bar. And Olden says, I want you to meet this guy. And he was the only guy I've ever seen bigger than Olden. And I walk up and I meet this guy, and he goes, hey, this is my buddy. His name's Shaquille. He's got out of LSU, and he's going to go play basketball for the Magic. He's going to be a star one day.
Wow.
And I shook his hand. Yeah. So it was that kind of place.
Wow.
Everything. But see, I had everything, but I found this weird thing, where I would get really drunk, or, would be partying, then I'm home and I'd be by myself. And then I just would start to weep. It was this weird thing. So I knew something was wrong. I knew there was something that inside of me, even though I had everything outside, there was something that wasn't happy. And I've spent, basically a life trying to understand that part of me, and then having the near-death experience, I think, made it really, really clear. There's a funny quote, though. It's not a funny quote. It's an interesting quote by Jim Carrey. And he says something, I wish everybody could be rich and famous. You've heard it?
Yeah, that speech. Yeah, I wish everyone could be rich and famous so they could understand it's not going to make them happy. Something like that.
Yeah, and again, hey, they don't play any vibe for me, anybody out there, because I've had a great frickin' life, man. I've done things, seen things, and I never thought I would. I was a guy from Santa Ana, California, where nobody ever got a scholarship out of out of my Saddleback High School. Nobody's ever, so I've done more in my life than I ever thought I would accomplish.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. How long did that time period last, where on the cover you have all this, your career skyrocketing, a lot of fame, but you're It sounds like you're feeling empty inside.
I think when you're in your teens and your early 20s, you're not aware of it.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? You're just
Yeah, it's
aware.
just
You're
life.
like, oh, yeah, it's just life. But something, and then, when I got to be, 28, 30, right around there, I was like, okay, something's wrong. And that's when I started with my first therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what it was about. I was also had an acting coach, and he's like, Dan, his name was Larry Moss. He's like, Dan, you got to go get therapy. All actors should have therapy. And I'm like, well, that's for crazy people, man. That's that's for crazy people. It's not for normal people. Look, I'm happy. At least I thought I was.
Yeah.
And I remember I went and therapy's a great thing. I look at it now. I still go, and I look at it this way. I've got, 60 minutes to talk about my favorite subject. Me.
And they have to listen.
They have to listen. If they're interested. It's like rent a friend.
Yeah.
And the great thing about it is they have no skin in the game. It's not your spouse, it's not your brother, it's not your mother, it's not your friend. They're completely biased opinion. And it's been such a great sounding board. And my whole thing with him is when I go see my therapist, I says, look, I just want to be a better man. Help me.
Yeah. Did you think at first that it was going to be viewed as being weak to ask for help or outside help?
I still struggle with that, man. Andrew.
Yeah.
I have trouble asking for help. There's a thing most of us have heard and understand what being codependent is.
Uh-huh.
You're overly dependent on somebody.
Right.
I'm what you would say. I'm counterdependent. I don't depend on anybody but me.
Uh-huh. So then you do it all. Then
I do it all. Yes. I've learned, when I was, how old was I? When I was 10 years old, my older brother got into an electrical accident. He was 12 and he died in my arms. So from that point forward, the one person I had in my life through the divorces, different homes, traveling was my brother. When he died, something clicked in me and I said, hey man, I got to take care of this shit by myself or it's not going to get done. So I am the opposite of codependent. It's called counterdependent, where you don't trust that anyone else can fully and really do it and be there. So you take care of everything yourself. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, it's fear of being vulnerable. So a lot of you don't trust anybody's going to be there for you because I didn't know that. So you learn to take care of all your own needs. So that's been a lot of my work in the last few years. And there's a great book out by Brene Brown.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Daring Greatly. And so, I really appreciate that. So for me now, this next phase is I've learned that vulnerability is the new courage.
Vulnerability is the new courage. And could you also say, because you said someone told you about your muscles when you were a kid, how you were flexing, and he says big boys don't cry. What do you think about like big boys or being tough? Being a man today is also being able to be vulnerable. Yeah.
So the interesting journey was, I realized, back when I played football, that this is a whole steroids were not illegal, So when I was 17, no, they weren't. 17, I had a knee injury. And I was in junior college, and I saw my dreams of, getting a scholarship disappear. Yeah. Uh-huh. And there was this huge guy in the gym, and I was like, I'd see him work out, and I'd kind of admire him from across the room. And finally I walked up and said, dude, you look amazing. What do you do? And he whispered in my ear and he says, I take steroids.
Sounded just like that, like all evil.
Yeah. Well, no, it was like the secret. I'm like, well, what is it? Because now everyone knows what they are.
Right.
Back then, he knew this was 1980, 82. I'm like, what is it? Well, they make you bigger, stronger, faster. And he says, I get them from a doctor, so they got to be safe.
Right.
And there were no regulations. And I said, well, sign me up.
Yeah.
At that time, I was 17 and a half. I went and saw the doctor and he goes, you have to be 18.
Oh, okay.
So I came back on my 18th birthday and I went one of the first steroid, doctors in America, Dr. Kerr. He opened up this cabinet and there's all this bottles of testosterone, like kind of this light, like, went off. And I was like, give me this stuff. And, they worked. And what I realized is that, after 25 years of, deep introspection and trying to understand myself and become a better man, I realized that all of that muscle I had, I was, 260 pounds. I could bench 450. I would I'd put 500 pounds on a squat rack and do it for 8 reps. I was strong. I had this body, but I realized I built all to protect the little boy inside who was on that plane at 5 years old, listening to that man say, big boys don't cry.
Wow.
The same thing when my brother died in my arms. I didn't cry because big boys don't cry. What I realized Another one of these things is why I work so hard all the time is I had survivor's guilt and I was living a life for two. I was trying to make my brother proud. And I guess the epiphany from it all is I realized big boys don't cry, but men do.
Wow.
And that was kind of the journey of that, I guess you could say from 5 years old till, 38, 40 years old. That was my journey.
Wow. Big boys don't cry, but men do.
Yeah.
Coming from the Gladiator.
Yeah. Look, it took a long time to understand that.
How do you, okay, so some guys might be listening to this and thinking, okay, so now am I just crying anytime something doesn't go my way? Am I crying when things aren't working out? Like, what is the balance here?
Well, the macho-ness still dies hard in me. You know what I mean? I rarely cry if something doesn't go my way. I don't think I've ever cried if something doesn't go my way. So I don't cry for myself like, oh man, I didn't get that TV show. Oh man, my book wasn't a New York Times bestseller. I don't cry. Those for me, I don't weep. I just buckle down, figure out what I need to learn and work hard. I think weeping is more when you're in pain, when you're hurt. I see something happen to a child that's innocent, like I get choked up now because I think, with kids especially, if something happens, a kid dies young or gets cancer, that's painful.
Yeah.
My mother, she just got diagnosed with cancer. And I was like, I got so choked up. A lot of times in life, we don't know how much we love something until we feel like we may lose it. And that just happened with my mother. I wasn't close to her growing up. She's Asian. She speaks a different language, and as I got older, I learned to really love her and appreciate her. When she had cancer, man, I was a mess. They said they had to take her kidney out. She's 79 years old. And I was like, oh my God, I love this woman so much. And I wept, I wept for her. And those are kind of the situations where I'm emotional. I see a good movie and like, something happens. I'm like, okay, that's so sad, man. So I do weep there too.
Yeah.
But,
right.
I don't ever feel sorry for myself and weep.
Okay. So
does that make sense?
Yeah. So you allow yourself to feel emotions. When emotions come, you don't block emotion or like suppress your emotions. Like if it's there, you allow it.
I allow it to come more. Yeah. Because before I repressed everything. I remember I was in like I said, I was an actor for a long time and I was an acting coach. I mentioned his name, Larry Moss. He doesn't coach anymore, but he coached Brad Pitt. He coached everybody and he was fantastic, but he was like a therapist. And I was doing a scene. And whenever I got emotional, I would like suck it up, breathe in, and I would wait for it to pass. Like, okay, I passed. Let me now deliver my next line. Now I've composed myself. I don't want my voice to crack. I didn't want people, like you said, to think I was weak. And he was like, Dan, you have to understand what the vulnerability is and what draws people to it is when you do have emotion and you let your voice crack. That's where the beauty is. That's where your gold is. And it took me a long time to understand that. If you're a man who's always held back your emotions and you feel emotions and you try to speak over them and your voice, is cracking, like, most of us stop and I need to compose myself. I need to be a man.
Right.
It's hard to let yourself speak through that and let your emotions come out. But to answer your question, I let things come through me. I process them. I feel them. And I still have problems with being seen as weak. I've got all these jock friends, professional football friends.
Right.
I got these CrossFit friends, like, hey man, let's go run through that wall over there. Hey, but look, I haven't mastered it.
Right.
I'm always a student, always learning, but that's part of daily work.
Yeah. Always learning. What is life like now for you with this new skill set or discovery? Being able to allow emotion to happen. So when your mom was sick, you were able to cry and feel that. When you see something, a movie or something going on in your life, you're able to feel it versus what it was like before where there was that wall and that suppression. Like what's the difference here?
Well, I feel alive. I feel like a human being, Before the heart attack, I'd always seen, like surrendering or something like that as a sign of weakness, but now I know it's a paradox. Sometimes we have to let go to win. Does that make sense? Because when they were taking me to when they wanted me to take me, when I had the heart attack, I went to urgent care. Right. Instead of like going to the hospital, because I said, hey, I'm Nitro. I can't be having a heart attack. It doesn't happen to me. I'm Mr. Healthy. I've been fit all my life. And went to them, went in there and they said, they put the EKG on. They said, Mr. Clark, you're having a heart attack. And I'm like, okay, my chest hurts. Yeah, you may be right. But
you may be right. These are like doctors.
Well, because science says, when you have an EKG and it comes back with abnormality, it could either be ischemia, stress, or it could be a heart attack. You have to have a blood test, and there's a enzyme, troponin, that's not supposed to be in your blood that your cardiac muscles excrete. So at the urgent care, they couldn't take the test. They didn't have the ability to take the blood test.
Okay.
So there was some room there, and I was like, hey, I want my friend to take me to the hospital, and I'm not getting in the ambulance.
Oh, because that is a surrender. You're laying down, strapped in, like.
Yeah, I've never been in an ambulance. I've never been that guy. And like when you're ever at a doctor's at the emergency room, you see that guy come in the ambulance. Like, you're like, that's
oh shit,
up, man.
Yeah,
I've never been that guy.
Right.
Then the doctor said something to me, man, Andrew. He said, I really have to advise you. I'm insisting that you take the ambulance. I'm like, why? And he said something. He says, because if you die on the way over, it shouldn't be up to your friend to resuscitate you. And right then, I surrendered. I surrendered to, saying yes to the ambulance. Then the next thing, the paramedics were coming in. And the weirdest, they were strapping me up, and I was that guy they were wheeling out. I was the guy they're putting in the ambulance. But the weirdest thing is when I truly surrendered, I felt the peace that I had not felt in a long time. Because in our lives, man, everybody out there, we're trying to control everything, what we feel, what we do, what we eat. We never surrender, or rarely. We're rarely at peace. And that's one of the things about meditating every morning, is I find that peace that stays with me throughout the day. It gives me a chance to connect to who I am and my true north, if that makes sense. What I didn't tell you, though, you asked me about this thing I do, is how I learned to be happy in the present moment. And it was like a bad cliff-ending movie. Well, I'll tell you when we get back after the commercial break.
I have it written down right here. I was going to come back to it. I have like highlights of things to go back to. But that story there, that is transformational, man. That is something that surrendering. And it's like, I feel like as men, we feel like surrender means loss. Like we lost, like we're weak. We're tapping out almost, like in a MMA match. Like, I've lost, like we don't want to surrender, but a new beginning, perhaps.
Yes. It's a paradox. Like I said, sometimes we need to surrender to win. Mm-hmm. And that particular moment taught me that, because I was like, hey, if I'm going to tap out, you're going to break my arm.
Exactly. You're going to rip my arm off and have to throw it across the room before I tap out. So back to how to be happy now, today, while still keeping the drive to continue to do great work.
Well, there's something that I do, which is interesting, I do have a lot of practices. I now keep a gratitude journal, which I believe in 100%. What am I appreciative about now? Before I go to bed, what was, amazing or great about today? So there's that practice, which I think is great. But on a daily practice, I now take the time to look at the small moments of human beauty and truth and recognize them. Does that make sense?
Such as?
So like I wake up in the morning and it could be something as simple as the smell of coffee. And I'll say, man, that coffee smells good. I'll vocalize it. I'll acknowledge it and say, man, thank you. I'm grateful for that. And what I'm doing each time I do this, Andrew, and anybody, if you do this, start doing this practice at home, what you're doing is you're putting money in your happiness bank. And the idea is that you make these small deposits all throughout the day, and you're creating a wellspring of happiness. I walk outside, and it only takes a few seconds. I walk outside, the sun hits my face, and I go, man, that feels good. Thank you. I'm I try to get into traffic and someone lets me in. and I'm like, oh man, hey, that's cool. Thank you. But too often we let these small moments slip by as we pursue these larger moments in life. We said earlier, I'll be happy when.
Right. Yeah,
I'll be happy when. Yeah, we postpone it. We fall, I'll be happy when syndrome. So what I've done is I've created a list, and there's probably 100 of things that I love that make me happy. Like fresh sheets, any puppy, seeing a baby smile, someone lets you in front of them at the line at the grocery store, finding the parking spot up close, the sound of the person you love, their laughter, your kid happy. All these things we let slip by us because we're looking for the larger moment. I believe if someone wants to be happy now, the key and the secret is to start to recognize and acknowledge these simple little moments and fill their, I know it sounds corny, but fill their happiness bank, because they have that bank, and that's the process to do it. And it's made huge change in my life where I am so much happier and so much more grateful.
I noticed none of those things cost money. You didn't say anything about, like you said, little things like the smell of coffee. You said someone let me in traffic or seeing a baby smile. Those are all things that there's no money there.
Yeah, they're things that are simple and they're easy. That's why I call them small moments of human beauty and truth. Yeah, have you ever seen, like, when you see someone be kind to somebody else? Like you see someone opening the door, you see, like, and now that's my new, like, that's my happiness. I love being in service. Like I'm the first guy, if I see like an older man or older woman trying to pull something off the plane, like I'm the first guy, let me get that for you.
Right.
Or I hold the door open, or someone's in a hurry. Hey, dude, go in front of me in the grocery line. Right. But it's that being in service. I think that's what's changed. I didn't really understand service. And I'm a person who I have a business. It's an obstacle adventure race business. It's called the Gladiator Run. I used to do it all over the country. I pretty much stay in California. It's in the same vein as Spartan and Tough Mudder. I've had it since 2010. So I know what being in service is. I've raised, $300,000 for autism.
Great.
So I understand that, but I never really felt it.
Wow.
You know what I mean? But so now it's being in service has taken on a whole new meaning. But yes, you're right. What you're saying is find those little moments. Your favorite meal, a rainbow, a sunset, when someone gives you a piggyback ride, you go to the register, you find something's on sale, you walk in nature, you suddenly see a good friend, there's no line at the airport security, you get upgraded for free. You see someone shining bright, take a moment, and here's how it works again, take a moment and recognize that moment, say, oh, hey, I just read an article that said bacon was okay to eat. That's cool. Thank you. Do you know what I mean? Or you get on the freeway and there's no traffic, at least in LA and in San Diego, and take a moment and just put a deposit into your gratitude bank. Yeah. When you do this, your life changes in magical ways.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, one might be able to ask themselves, how full is your happiness bank? Like, did you notice all the little joys that life gave you, or did you not?
Yeah, but you won't have to. You do this, you're happier. I mean, it's anecdotal evidence. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. There's not a scientific, study saying 17 people said, you do this, you are happier. I mean, at least I am. I've shared this experience with other people. It's part of the, Fuck Dying book. It's one of the things I instruct people to do because I'm so sick of people waiting and putting off their happiness.
Yeah.
So it's one of the lessons I teach there, and you start doing this, man. Like I said, your life changes and happiness, your pain flies away and happiness beats a path to your door.
Wow, that's great. Why don't we see it? If all these things are happening to us every single day, why don't we see it, even though it makes sense that I should be happy, but why don't I see it? Why don't I appreciate it and allow that to kind of soak in for the day?
Yeah, I don't have an exact answer for that. I think we're too busy, letting the past influence and with our mind on the future, and we're too preoccupied with our daily lives to take. And I think a lot of times people don't know how to. So hopefully sharing this with you, and it took me, I'm 52. It took me 52 years to discover this. You know what I mean? Because I was always, I'll be happy when. I didn't know how to be happy right now. So maybe by, me sharing this and me being here and speaking with you and people who download your podcast, they're like, dude, Nitro was more than spandex. he was right. This shit works, man. You know what? I did this a couple times a day and I recognize these things, and I'm happier, So I think a lot of it is we just don't know how to, there's not been a great model for us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I noticed that too. Sometimes I'm driving and I could be in traffic and I could be like, oh, I'm in traffic. This sucks. I'm wasting time right now. I hate traffic. But then sometimes I'm like, I forget I'm in San Diego and I look to the left and I see these palm trees. I look to the right. I see people riding bikes, having fun on vacation. And I'm like, oh, like there's, even though you're in traffic, like there's still stuff to see. Like there's still life, like there's still beauty, the blue sky, the sun. And in those moments, I can feel very thankful that this is where I live, in a place that has traffic, but it's absolutely gorgeous. I'm sure you can relate at a higher level in LA.
You know, dude, you're living the life. You're living your life correctly when you can do that. You know, I'll give you an example. We're talking about traffic. Not too long ago was my brother's 40th birthday party. And I'll tell you two quick perspectives. Okay. One perspective is you get on the freeway, you're like, oh, shit, there's 3 hours of traffic. You know, what am I going to do? You know, why me? Oh, man, I can't believe, how come they live down there? How come nobody comes sees me up here in LA? Why I got to drive down there? Right. And you get there, and, you know, by the time you get there, you're upset, you're angry. The other perspective is, okay, I've got 3 hours here. Oh, you know what? I love learning. I'm going to go put a podcast on. I've been looking for time in my life to listen to these two podcasts that are important to me, that they sound like they're interesting. Right. Like you had an interesting one on 7 regrets or something like that a while ago.
Yeah. The 7 regrets of men. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was interesting to me. And I said, okay, I'm going to take some time. So it's all perspective. You know, you look at something and it's the different way you see it is a direct response to your happiness level and to the quality of your life. You know, so you can get in the car and you can say, okay, 3 hours. Great. There's a podcast that I want to hear. I'm just going to sit back and chill. Or there's a couple of phone calls I had to roll. You know what? I haven't talked to my mom in a while. Let me call my mom. So it's a perspective on how you see things. Do you know what I mean? You could take the same journey and completely change how you experience it, right, just by your perspective.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so this would allow us, going back to where we started, to be happy today, now in the present, rather than postponing, you know, till next week, next month, next year, so that you're living. And I asked you, what's the difference? And you said, I'm alive, which was awesome. Because I feel like that, you know, we can get caught in this zombie mode where it's like we're a zombie going after a goal.
Yeah, I agree. So it's interesting. I was, like I said, I do CrossFit, and I'm pretty good at it. You know, for my age group, I can't keep up with the young bucks.
I mean, the guys can't see you, but you're fit, man. You look good.
Well, the young bucks I can't keep up with it anymore. But for my age group, you know, I'm one of the top guys in the world, humbly. And I remember I was training with this guy at my gym in Los Angeles. And he was giving me a ride home that day for whatever reason. And we got in the car, and he just had heard that I had a heart attack a few years earlier. Right. He's like, he was 24 and he's an ex-Navy guy. And he's like, dude, I heard you had a heart attack, man. That must really suck. And, you know, my responsive answer at first was like, yeah, it did suck. And he said, that's crazy, man. That's terrible. You know, I'm glad you're doing better. And I nodded at him like, yeah, man, cool. You're right. Because that's what men do. We don't express how we're really feeling, right. You know, but then it didn't sit right with me. Yeah. And I remember the conversation, you know, I said, look, yeah, it did suck having a heart attack in a big way, but I'm also grateful for it. And this kid's 24 and he's like, what? What do you mean? How could you possibly be grateful for almost dying, for never going to the hospital, for always having to worry, for never being the same? You know, it took me a second there, you know, and that sentence you said, well, I said, well, I'm grateful I didn't die. You know, I said, heart attacks, heart disease kill more people than all cancers combined. Yeah. And he says, you know, he's 24. Right. Like I'm sure he says, I guess you could look at it that way. He says, but I wouldn't want a heart attack no matter what. And I started to think, okay, how can I express to him the difference in my life? And I said, look, I didn't want to have a heart attack. I says, but I'm grateful for who I've become because of it. You know, I came back different, but I also came back better. You know, I said, the heart attack molded me into the man I am today. You know, I've grown in character and compassion. You know, I said, basically through having a heart attack, I've become a better man, you know, and for that, I'm grateful. Because the moment you face your mortality, the more you think you're going to die or believe that you might, you know, a profound shift takes place. You know, in an instant, you become aware of, you know, what really matters. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I'm internalizing it. It's, in that moment, did you have this experience, like when you woke up after the heart attack, or after, you know, the doctor said you're going to be okay, or was this something that, you've been constantly developing since that date?
Well, the doctor never tells you you're okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he doesn't tell you, okay, I was in the hospital and I got home, and he doesn't say, hey, you're going to be just fine. He says, look, your heart's not going to be the same. Your life may not be the same. And there's a very high percentage of people, I think it's like 60% of people who have heart attacks under 50 who die within the next year. So the odds aren't with you. So so he never says you're going to be okay. I kind of got lost.
Was there any part of you in that right there where you're just like, oh, well, I'll prove you, like, I'm not a statistic, like kind of that, maybe some of that earlier energy? It
was exactly the opposite. I remember lying on the hospital thinking, after the doctor telling me, what my life might look like. And I remember sitting there thinking, look, if I can't live life on my own terms, then I don't think I want to be here. I think I want to die, and I told myself, I'm not going to be that feeling sorry for himself grown man in the hospital. You know what I mean? If I can't be here and do it my terms, I just want to die, And the next thing I know, I'm crying. I am that guy, and I'm weeping. I'm feeling sorry for myself. And, I'm like, why me? Why me? I've done everything right.
Yeah.
And in life, Andrew, you can do that. You can do everything right. And bad shit happens.
It still happens.
It still happens, but it gives you a chance to reach to see who you can be when you face adversity, how you get back up. So as I was sitting there, why me, why me? I had an epiphany. Instead of why me, I think all the work I've done on myself, all the self-help books I've read, all the seminars I've seen, everything I've put into, there was a question that floated up in my mind. Instead of why me, I said, you know what? Screw that. What can I be? What can I be instead of why me? So I changed the question in my head, and all of a sudden I started getting all these answers. I can be a guy who makes a comeback from a heart attack and shows people how good life can be. I can be a guy who turns a tragedy into inspiration for others. Mm-hmm. So all these things floated in my head, and then I just said, you know what? A broken heart does not mean broken man. Broken heart does not mean broken man. And then I realized at that moment, and this is probably the turning point, I realized at that moment that I'd always been more than my body and what I could do physically. Through everything, there was always a light that shined bright in me. There was always a volition, a will, a desire to be better, to be something that I still had. And if that's all I'm going to have, that's still a lot. And it was from that moment that I turned my thinking around. And it still wasn't easy, Andrew. When I got home from the hospital the first day, they're like, you can't lift anything heavy. You can't walk up and down stairs. Be careful when you walk up and down stairs. You don't want to, have another heart attack. So my bedroom was a flight up, and I was like, taking one step, another step, like, am I going to die? Am I going to die?
Oh my gosh.
And my goal, Andrew, for that first day home, my goal for the entire day. Now, I'm a guy who sets goals. I do moonshots, win an Oscar, New York Times bestseller.
Right.
I set goals. I like, play in the NFL. And my goal for that first day home was to walk downstairs to the refrigerator and not die.
Oh my gosh.
So I remember, taking step by step. There's like, I think 22 steps, because it was like 2 stories below. And each time, checking, short breath. So, okay, am I okay? It's almost like when you do a climb at high elevation without oxygen, you take a breath, breathe.
Yeah.
Check, take a breath, breathe. It was like that walking down the stairs. And I walked down the stairs. I fell down to a chair. The sun hit my face. And I said, you know what? This is amazing. The sun hitting my face. I am never going to take it for granted again. And that day, like I said, that was my whole goal. Walk down the refrigerator, not die. And that's all I did. But I felt like I won something. I accomplished something. The second day, I said, I'm going to walk down and touch my mailbox and not die. And that was my goal for the second day. My third day, I'm going to go touch my neighbor's door. The fourth day was I'm going to walk to the corner and touch the stop sign. About 12, 14 days into it, the doctor said, maybe 2 weeks into it, he said I could ride a stationary bike with no tension. Yeah. Just put the wheels, go round and around. I was in my garage riding my life cycle, just going round and around, feeling like I won the, whatever that is. I won the, what's that famous bike race? The one that Lance Armstrong cheated.
The Tour de France?
Yeah, I felt like I was riding my bike. I felt like I'd won the Tour de France, not pedaling. So it was, and each day, I extended my reach beyond my grasp. Mm-hmm. And that's how I came back 18 months, no less, but maybe 14 months later. I was standing at the podium of a CrossFit event after I won an event.
Wow.
So that's that journey to the comeback.
Wow.
And people want to know what success is and how to create, not success, but how to create success. It's having daily courage. You know, people think courage is, oh, the fireman jumped into the fire, you know, the burning building. That's extreme courage. Sometimes it takes the most courage to do what you really want to do in life, you know, but it's built by small steps of daily courage and just getting a little bit better, showing up, just getting a little bit better, just getting a little bit better, just getting a little bit better. You do that, and then 5-10 years, you can have anything you want.
Powerful story. I hope I can walk down the stairs and not die, to winning a CrossFit tournament. What a journey. And there's so many lessons that you've shared inside several of the different stories you've shared in this interview here. I want to dive into the knowledge round. Just going to ask you a few more rapid fire questions. So are you ready for the knowledge round here, Dan?
Yes, sir.
All right.
There we go. The big money. What's behind door 3?
So you might be wondering, why would I ever invest in a coach? I've never done anything like that before. Well, it's going to shorten your learning curve and save you the time that it would take to achieve your goal. You can avoid making mistakes that you would otherwise make. You'll get more results because everything will be tailored to your specific needs and challenges. The coach will hold you accountable so you can't procrastinate, so you can't be lazy, so you can't say, I didn't have the time. You'll be challenged and pushed harder than you've ever been pushed. You'll have conversations so powerful that you'll feel more energized, alive, and confident and certain about the goals that you have in front of you and where you want to go. Most importantly, where you want to be. You'll go farther than you've ever gone before when you have a coach. If you want to learn more about our high performance men's coaching program, go to kfmcoach.com. Again, that's kfmcoach.com to learn more about our high performance men's coaching program. You have got to understand that every successful person in the world invests in coaching to go from good to great. And if you're already a high achiever, then how much more could you achieve if you had a high performance men's coach at your side to push you even further? Go to kfmcoach.com to learn more and apply for our high performance men's coaching program. Again, that's kfmcoach.com. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime. First question I have for you is, what advice would you give to someone who's feeling really lost or unsure of their purpose, really not sure where to focus their energy?
That's the whole question?
Yeah.
Okay. I would say do what you love. As simple as that. Just do what you love. And be okay with being afraid to do something and still doing it anyways. So if you can be afraid of something, but push yourself to go do it, that's what courage is. And that's how you're going to, day by day, step by step, improve your life. You know, I have this thing I do. And it's going to be kind of I'll try to make it quick. I have this thing I do. You know, recently I went through a rough time. Besides the heart attack, you know, heart attack was 3 years ago. I got some bad news about my latest heart test. You know, they found a spot in my heart. My mom was diagnosed with with liver cancer. I just had split with my girlfriend of 10 years, and you know, we're going through a battle over the different shared interests. There are a couple other things going on, and I had a hard time getting out of bed. You know, I had a hard time getting out of bed, and I went to the gym. And for some reason that day at that gym, that coach happened to be a huge American Gladiator fan. And so we go through the warm-up and all this stuff. And he was like, in honor of the American Gladiators, we're going to start this workout, the WOD, the American Gladiator way. We're going to do it. And he started doing the old call signal. Contenders ready. Gladiators ready. 3, 2, 1, go. And even though I wasn't ready to start, even though I didn't feel like I wanted to be there, when they had that countdown and he said go, I went. Even though I wasn't feeling like it, even though I was depressed, even though I had a shit going on in my life. So it stuck with me after that. And I realized, you know what? All through our lives as men, most of us have been in some kind of competition where there was a countdown. You know, if you've watched American Gladiators, you know, contender ready, gladiator ready, 3, 2, 1. And no matter where, if you're running a race, if you're in any kind of competition, even a science fair, you know, there's always a countdown and there's always go. It happens on a football field 60 seconds at a time. That whistle blows, no matter if your jock strap isn't right, if your shoe's loose, when that comes, it's you go. And when you go, you learn to adapt and you learn to figure things out on the way and do the best you can do.
Yeah.
And so I started doing this. And you're talking about people who are not feeling like they have a purpose and they're a little down. So I started doing this weird thing, not only in the CrossFit gym, but like to get myself to do anything is, I had to finish the second book. I have, like I said, my other business, I had administrative stuff to do. I was like, oh, someone wanted me to come to this. Everything I started doing, gladiator ready, contender ready, 3, 2, 1, go. So I say that to people at home. If you're having a trouble, first it'll make you laugh, but there's something with our prefrontal cortex that triggers, and we get away from emotions and feelings, and we jump into action when we give ourselves a countdown. So that's kind of a tip I can give to people to get them going and get them started.
That's really good. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. What do you think is holding most men back from becoming stronger, more grounded men today?
When you say stronger, emotionally or physically?
A balance of both, but leaning more towards the emotional.
I think we need better role models. I think that's the challenge. I think there's becoming more, people that can show guys like, look, here's the balance between strength and vulnerability. Here's the balance between being a man and protecting what you love, yet having kindness in your heart to express your feelings. So I think, my generation, it was, we hit our, my parents, they smacked us around, I'll give you something to cry about. And now that's changed. So we're raising better human beings. So I think it's looking to the role models that are in front of us now, the new ones, I think are going to be a big help. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, it sounds like, getting mentors, like getting the right role models, mentors in place, surrounding yourself with the right people.
Yeah. And again, I think a lot of it, again, like I go back to daily courage.
I like that, daily courage.
Finding that courage.
It's the title of your next book, Daily Courage.
Well, it's in this Fuck Dying book too.
Okay.
You have to have daily courage. A lot of the stuff I'm talking about here are shared more intimately in the book. Yeah.
Okay. What were you saying though? I came in and said you should write a book, but you were saying daily courage.
Oh, I think a lot of it goes back to that daily courage, and we talked about it. It's about being afraid. It's about not being ready to start, but starting anyways, taking those first steps and jumping in. I do this other thing. I wanted to start meditating again because I was always about visualization. See yourself successful, which is very active and goal oriented. When I switched to meditation, I think when I was first at 25, it was an adjustment for me to understand the difference between being goal orientated and being peaceful inside and orientated and being okay. So when I wanted to get back to meditating, I'm like, man, I don't have time to meditate. I'm so busy. Yeah. So I do this little thing, and I do this with work too.
Okay.
Is I say, okay, you know what? I'm just going to sit down and meditate for 5 minutes. That's it. And I'm getting up. I can do 5 minutes. So it's showing up and getting yourself to do that first 5 minutes. And every single time I've done this, and it's probably 200-300 times, I always end up meditating for 15 or 20 minutes. Yeah. When I have work in front of me that needs to be done, like if anybody else is a writer staring at that blank page, and you just want to punch yourself in the face.
Yeah.
What I say is, you know what? I'm just going to go write for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I go sit down for 5 minutes and I give over to the flow, and it ends up taking care of itself. So if you're having trouble showing up, just show up and say, I'm going to do it for 5 minutes.
Yeah, I can resonate with that writing. Yeah, so I've written a few, and it's I'll just say I don't feel like doing it, but let's just finish this sentence, or let's write one sentence and finish it, and then you can't just write one sentence. You usually will go to town for at least 30 minutes or something.
Yeah, exactly, and you also said show up and do that one sentence. That's key. Yeah. Woody Allen said 90% of it's showing up.
Yeah. So your book's here, Gladiator, and then by the time this airs, Fuck Dying, which I really want to check out both of your books. Those are your books. I want to give credit to the work that you've done, but for yourself, what have been 3 of your most influential books that have helped you on your journey, and briefly why?
Oh, the first one, easy, hands down, is a book called Psycho-Cybernetics. It's an older book by Maxwell Maltz. It was like really the first book on visualization. So visualization, when I told you that whole story about being in high school and being too fat to play and not playing. Right. What I left out is the one other thing that I did is I started visualizing. I started seeing myself successful in my mind. And that was the first time I ever saw myself be good at anything it was in my mind. And I did this repetitively, and I learned this through the book Psycho-Cybernetics, and great things followed. Like I said, I went from quitting football to being the MVP in 1 year. And I've used that visualization tool my entire life. And I think almost every success I've had in my mind, I've seen it first. So Psycho-Cybernetics, Maxwell Maltz was definitely a life-changing book. And this is going to sound corny, and we talked about this, but I think a book that changed my life, and this isn't a shameless plug, this is the truth, is my second book, Gladiator, a true story, just because to put the words on the paper and to let myself feel and express, it's very raw. It's not like, hey, Blasto and Turbo were having sex in the back room, and hey, these guys, it wasn't about that. It was very similar to A Million Little Pieces, James Frey book. It was just about, it was so open and so vulnerable and so just to get it on paper. And it changed my life writing it. The third book, there's been so many books. I think as far as transformation as a man, a lot of Tony Robbins' earlier books, but I remember one that really hit me when I was 24, 25. I was starting to get that empty feeling like success wasn't what I thought it was. I read a book by Dan Millman. It was Journey of the Peaceful Warrior.
Yeah.
And that was so interesting, is that you could be a warrior poet. Yeah. And he goes a lot into meditation and finding that happiness inside of yourself instead of externally looking for it. So that book as a young man, those were, all quite instrumental. And I probably read 50 books a year. I'm a voracious reader. I didn't have a lot of good role models, growing up.
Yeah.
So I found how to live my life and how to be a better man and how to accomplish almost anything through the books I read. It's condensed knowledge. Mm-hmm. Someone spends a lifetime learning a skill.
Yeah.
And they take the time to write it and put a lifetime of skill and expertise in between the covers of two books. Yeah. It's amazing. You got to read or, listen to books on podcasts, because they've completely changed, transformed, and shaped my life.
Yeah. Yeah. For $10 too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Still. And so now this next question here is more of a scenario for yourself. So imagine you had 60 seconds with 25-year-old Dan. If you could envision where he's at personally and professionally and in his relationships, and knowing what you now know today and have experienced, and if you had 60 seconds with 25-year-old Dan, what would you tell him to do? What would you tell him not to do?
I would give him very simple advice, simple words that change people's lives. I would say, Dan, you got this. There's greatness inside of you. I believe you. I believe in you, and I love you. That's it.
That's it. Anything else?
That's it. No, I mean, because I believe that we all have greatness inside of us. It shines in different ways, but I don't think enough people accept this. I don't think enough people are told that they have greatness in them. I don't think enough people are told that they are beautiful, because we got this fucking stupid image of beauty as someone on a cover of a magazine. That's not what's beautiful about a person, and I love you. A lot of people aren't told that and don't feel that inside, self-love. So I would say I love you to me, because I would want to make sure that I love myself. Uh-huh. I know I talk a lot, but I'm going to tell you another quick little story.
I love them. Keep going.
I remember being wheeled into the hospital, and we talked about this. I was the guy on the gurney, and I could remember the paramedics took me out. They started wheeling me in the hospital through the emergency room. And I had this weird out-of-body experience, where I was kind of floating above my body. I wasn't dead, but it was kind of this place in between life and death. I remember I was floating above my body, and I looked down at everybody, and all I saw were these brilliant lights emanating from each person. They were like stars. They were shining bright. Each person was, and I was also one floating above my body. And we were all connected. All races, all religions, all classes, all sexualities were connected by one thing, and that was love. And in that moment, I knew and, felt God for the first time in the most intimate sense, at least for me. God was love, and I believe that love is, what connects us all. So that's why it would be so important for me to say those words, to say, I believe in you. You got this. I think you're beautiful. You have greatness inside of you, and I love you.
I'm letting that soak in. Really, really powerful. And now, even if you have to summarize some of your main points here.
I'm worn out, dude. I gave it all, man. I'm worn out.
You did give it all, man. What? You're like not ready for this next one.
I only have so much to give, man.
You have given so much. I've been loving this interview. It's been so powerful for myself, and I know the thousands of guys listening. It's been very impactful. My final thing here is, even if you have to summarize some of your main points, what would you say is your philosophy on life and success?
It's so much of being open and being a student and living in gratitude and appreciation. I think what I've learned in my years on this planet is that gratitude and appreciation are the gateway to happiness. And when you welcome those into your life, you welcome happiness into your life. I think that's how I would be grateful, appreciate, be humble, work hard, do things for others, do what you love. Time is not guaranteed. I think I guess I like to tell stories. Well, I don't want to tell that story because there's too many. We'll be on here for like 7. The people are like, oh my God, I can't download this podcast. It's,
no,
it's 17 hours.
I think guys are loving this is what they're really doing.
It's like I said, when you face your mortality, I think in an instant you get an idea of what's important, what you love in life, and how you want to live your life. And having 3.5 years to look over it, I realized, for me, what's important, because at that moment thought I was going to die. I didn't care how many cars I had, man. I didn't care how many homes, I don't care that I had a 6,000 square foot house, a vacation home. I didn't care about that shit. I didn't care how many plaques were on the wall. What I cared about and who I wanted near me were the people I loved. So I think that's probably the most important advice. Find out what's important to you and live that every day. And again, for me, what was most important was to have the people I loved and my good friends near me. And I wanted to die, if I was going to die, without regrets. My son was 27 at the time, and I was estranged from him. And not strange, we just had problems. We couldn't communicate. And I was always like, oh, my son, he just doesn't, da-da-da-da. I was always putting it on him. And after that, I said, I don't care. I don't care what our differences are. I love my son, I want to have a relationship with him, and I want him near me.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate you being vulnerable and really practicing what you're preaching while delivering your message.
Yeah, I know it's hard, man. I felt the emotion come up there, and I was like, okay, be a man, suck it up, don't let your voice crack. And I said, you know what? No, that's not what my lesson is to let the emotion and to feel it. That's what you've been talking the whole time. Don't be a dick and not do it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's hard, even though I think people look at people and say, man, that person's evolved. That person's an expert. Everyone is still struggling.
Right.
You know what I mean? Everyone's still struggling, and we're doing the best we can. And that's all I ask listeners to do is just do the best you can, man. And the next day, show up and do a little better.
Yeah, that's great. We shall conclude the episode here with Dan Nitro Clark. For the audience, go to Amazon, type in Dan Clark, check out Gladiator. His previous book, his latest book coming out, Fuck Dying, which is basically what we've been talking about for this entire episode here. There's so much that we haven't covered that is in there that we should all go check out. I know I'm going to pre-order the book and get it. By the time this airs, it should be live on Amazon. And
well, Andrew, I don't mean to interrupt you, bro. It's actually, I got talked into doing a crowdfunding Kickstarter campaign for Fuck Dying. And
Okay.
at first, I'm going to say the way things come, at first I was like, well, I don't need to raise money. I can publish the book myself. My ego got involved, like, hey, that's for people who are broke. And and I said, I don't want to be perceived as that. I can go publish this book right now. And then I had someone very smart and wise say, hey, it's not about you. They said crowdfunding is a great way for people to get involved become involved in something they believe in, to become involved in a movement. It's also a great way for people to get bonus things, to get rewards, to get more things than just clicking a button and buying a book on Amazon. So when you guys are hearing this, there'll probably be a Kickstarter campaign under the Fuck Dying. And, if you want to get involved in the movement and help, change lives and change the world, come check it out. And, I'll be very, very grateful and look forward to connecting with everybody soon.
All right, absolutely. So should we go to Kickstarter.com and search for it, or do you have a URL that would take people there?
Well, I think "Fuck Dying" is pretty original. So the whole title is "Fuck Dying."
Okay.
how cheating death kicked my ass into loving, learning, and living my best life.
Yeah. So I think we can go to Kickstarter and type in Dan Clark. I don't know if you're going to be able to put "fuck" on in Kickstarter, but maybe you put "fu" and then
you guys will find it.
We'll figure it out.
No, I know your listeners. I know your listeners, and if they want to find something, and
they'll figure it out.
They're going to find it.
Yeah, they're going to find it, and I'll put it on the page on our site. I'll put links to it as well, and make sure to promote that as well, because you have a powerful message. You've impacted my life. I've interviewed almost 400 guys now, very high caliber guys. This was a fantastic interview. I can't say that for all the interviews, even though I love all the people I interview. They share great messages. This was in particularly, I don't know if it was just perfect timing for me to hear, and I was really resonating with the stories, but this was an extremely life-changing interview. So I'm going to do my job after this and promote this out and get your message out to thousands of more guys in the blog and the YouTube and email it out in social media, because it's a powerful message. I really appreciate your time.
Dude, those are such kind words, man. And, it makes it feel like it's worth it, when I hear you say things like that. And I'm honored, and I'm glad that we, had a chance to connect. And, you have my email, and I'll give you my email for the listeners, and I'm here to help, man.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and millions of downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we're just getting started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a helpful review in iTunes, because it really helps the podcast grow so we can impact even more men in the world who need this. Guys, this is all about living with purpose, where every day you only do things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. And always remember, love the life you have while creating the life of your dreams. Go to kfmfree.com to get a surprise bonus I've made for my listeners. Again, that's kfmfree.com for something that's changed my life, and I'm offering it to you for free. Also, check out my Amazon best-selling books that I've written for you to help you crush life at kfmauthor.com. Again, that's kfmauthor.com to see all the books I've created to help you break through in life. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, founder of knowledgeformen.com, and I'll see you